I know this young woman who wants to start this high school girls group. Are you in? That is the peak of femininity right there as Mary. The church makes a lot of things black and white, and the problem is social media, the world around them, tries to distort that.
Podcast 16. Great to be here. We have our fourth guest. I can do math now. This is Nora Beatty. She is a young adult girls group leader. She's the oldest girl of 10 siblings, and she is the sister of Ben. It is an honor to have you here, Nora.
Welcome.
It's an honor to be here. I never know when to talk.
Just talk whenever you feel like talking. This is her first podcast, so don't give her too much grief. Please like and subscribe if you like the podcast and want Nora to be on more.
Please give me all the likes. I'm very insecure. I really need the validation. This would go a long way.
That's perfect. That's what we need. We just need to build up the podcast a little bit more and just get more followers, more subscribers. If you guys like Nora and you want to see more guests like her, people that have a great personality.
Or just me all the time.
People that, have great product placement for water bottles.
Pure life.
Pure life.
That's what we're...
Drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly. Drink refreshingly.
And we're going to take a nice turn into your life. So the thing I mentioned right when I introduced you was you are a young adult girls group leader.
I am, yeah.
How's that going?
It's going pretty well. I started it in March 2020 with a friend that actually your mother introduced me to. I was at a time in my life where I was like, I gotta make some serious changes, and I always wanted to work in some sort of ministry with high schoolers specifically, because I had the world's coolest youth minister, and high-key really wanted to be here. Please, I hope she does not watch this, because that would make me seem like stalker level, I just really wanted to be my high school youth minister. No.
So we'll tag her in.
Great. I love to hear it. Really wanted to be that. And so I was like, you know what? If an opportunity comes my way, I'm just going to start saying yes to things. And literally the same day, your mom sends me a text and she's like, I know this young woman who wants to start this high school girls group. Are you in? Do you want me to set you guys up? I was like, all right. Yeah, absolutely. We met up and we just really hit it off. My co-lead, Mary, can I say her full name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary Nujabauer and I, we met at a coffee shop and just started hitting it off. We had the same goal. We really wanted to kind of switch up the way youth group goes, where someone just sits there and talks at you. We wanted it to be discussion based, where you have an opportunity to listen to someone talk about your faith and then discuss it so that it becomes more of your own. So we had a similar mindset, similar goal. We tried to get it started. Pandemic shut us down, and so we tried to do a virtual thing, but it was so new that it just did not pan out. So we sent out emails and stuff, and then the next year, or not the next year, it was the fall of 2020. I was like, let's just go for it. A solid group of girls just started coming and really liked it. And we started off just sort of we didn't have a plan for how it was going to go. We just sort of we'll talk about maybe virtue this week, or maybe next week we'll talk about this saint. And but then the next year I thought, hey, let's get into themes and let's structure this around what the heart of what we really want to talk to women about. And so we did this before Matt Walsh released his What is a Woman documentary, but we were like, what does it mean to be a Catholic woman in the church? And it was so funny because we thought we were so clever with this whole what is a woman essentially? What is my purpose? How do I enact it? And someone pointed out, they're like, I really love how you based it on faith, hope, and charity there. And I was like, oh, I guess we did do that. Yeah.
We definitely.
I was like, we planned that, and we did not think we were super clever. So.
Sometimes the Holy Spirit just kind of works out that way and does stuff for you.
Yeah, pretty much. So
just kind of leads you on in certain directions. I think one thing that's really interesting that I think your group, something that has happened obviously in the modern age, is just the rise of social media. And social media gives off this really big appearance of gathering people together in groups, where it tries to gather people into groups based on their interests, right? So your search page or whatever it is will show you stuff that you like based on your likes. But what we've seen has come from that has like this really big separation of society where everyone is stuck on their phones.
Yeah.
And your group kind of is like the antithesis of that, because at the same, like, you have the same goal of like bringing girls together for the certain interest, right?
Right.
But there's a much different aspect. Can you like speak a little bit on that?
Well, yeah, another big thing we really wanted it to be was it's very much modeled off of a girls group that I was a part of in high school as well. And one of the biggest draws, I think, for me was that it wasn't in any church setting. It was set in someone's home. And there was something that was so communal and comfortable about that. It created an environment of safety, which sounds so dumb to say sometimes, but it really was. And the first thing I told Mary was like, I don't want to be doing this in a church basement. It needs to be in the comfort of someone's home. I want the girls to have cups of tea. I want there to be snacks. I want it to be a soft, comfy place where people get to come and relax and just talk. It was very driven towards a female-friendly environment, because what do women like to do?
Have tea parties.
Have tea parties and talk. So yeah, we've been hosting it at Mary's house for like 2 years now. We started off at my mom's house because she had a space large enough to host everyone, and then we moved it to Mary's house, and it's just been there ever since. And the girls will like gather around, they'll sit down, and we always start off with a question of like, what's one thing that's rocking your week? And so we say that it could be as grand of a scale as like, I won $1 million, to I saw a leaf on the tree and it was super pretty. There was one girl once who we said, what's rocking your week? And she's like, well, I guess it's not very pleasant, but it did rock my world. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. Go for it. So it's been super interesting. There is nothing more humbling in the world than running a group for high school girls, because they are vicious.
I can only imagine.
I can only imagine.
We say 1,000 good things in meeting, and they always remember the dumb stuff. Like, there was one time I was sharing like all of the different miracles about Our Lady of Guadalupe. If you ever want to be wowed, just look up the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pretty cool stuff. And like, there's just all of these really cool facts about it. And I'm saying that. And their minds are being blown. I say Our Lady of Guadalupe one time. One f***ing time. At the end of our year picnic. I'm like, all right, guys, get in a group. Tell us what your favorite meeting was. Oh, I really like the one where you said Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was like 5 different people said that to me. And I'm like, you guys are the literal worst. I texted my youth minister and I was like, hey, I started running a girls group. I wanted to say, I am so sorry for how I was in high school.
I think it's really interesting that it's just a group for girls. Because you mentioned that you were in a youth ministry, and I was part of the same youth ministry as you growing up, and that was a co-ed one. There was both boys and girls. Why do you think there should be, like, you have a separation for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think that reason is, and why do you think it's so important?
I think it is super important for girls to be just in an environment where they're not really in competition with each other. Because the second, like, men and women are in the same place, there is this sense of competition because you want the other person to see you. And also, you kind of have to put on this face for, like, this outside force that comes in. And so I really think that both men and women thrive more together when they have that time separated from each other as well in formation.
Yeah, because I was gonna put you on this because I think you and I were both boys in high school at one point, right? And
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. At this point, I think we can safely say, and it's a really good point that you bring up. Where if you separate boys, because boys and girls both have different virtues that I think that they're more acclimated towards, right?
Yeah.
And boys can really only find those virtues when they're just with boys, and girls can only find those virtues when they're just with girls, because when you put them together, it just creates this like big dating hub.
It's just, like you said, the competition.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to get someone else's attention. Like, there's always that joke, like, after the meeting, they had to put all the chairs away. All the
Oh,
dudes grab as many chairs as they
grab as many,
possibly
yep.
can. They're like, oh yeah, dude, she's gonna love me. I have 4 chairs on each arm. Like, I got a whole table.
Have you seen that photo? It's like
Oh,
the
dude,
guy
I
with,
was
like,
yeah,
he's got, like,
that
10
was
chairs.
me. That was me. We were figuring out every way we can take a chair. But yeah, it's 100% men and women are different. We are. We're especially if we're growing up, and separating that and focusing on how a man can be better or a woman can be better is super important. And definitely need the co-ed at times too. I mean, we're going to be
Absolutely.
with people
Yeah.
of the opposite sex, but yeah, it's beautiful what you guys are able to do.
And I think that's really cool. I think it's a really cool idea when you compare and contrast to social media. Social media truly groups everyone and just basically tries to throw you into a big lump of like nothingness, right? Because when you throw everything together, like for example, when you throw every single color together, what do you get? You get black, right? Or no, you get white. But you get one of those extremes, right? Whereas like it's the same thing I think with social media where you throw everything together and hope that it creates something, but really what it does is just creates this blandness of life. Whereas like if you just put purple and orange together, it creates an entirely new color, right? Like girls, like when you lessen the circumstances, you can create more fruit. I guess I'm trying to say.
I would tend to agree with that. I think there's also a nature, and speaking more towards men, where they're, I hate saying these words because they've been co-opted and used in stupid ways, but like there's a bit of an affirmative nature to men where they can be ridiculous sometimes, where they can think like, I'm gonna set this thing on fire, and he's got like 3 other guys who are like, hell yeah, man, let's set this on fire, let's burn it down, and there's no women around to be like, that's a terrible idea.
Right.
They can learn it for
The
themselves.
boys will find out.
See, I promise you, when we have those ideas in our minds, it is the greatest idea we possibly could have thought of.
Hey
in the
man,
moment.
that's how fireworks were invented, right?
Yeah, we're just like, we go, dude, this is going to work. And everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. And
like,
then someone's missing a finger, but it's fine. We figure that out. But yeah, men need women.
yeah, absolutely, you need them, but I think they also need a space to be creative. And for women, there needs to be a space to just talk and just build genuine community. Because that's really what lacks. You're surrounded by your friends online, but there's no real basis of authentic community.
Would you say that your group is trying to kind of like rediscover what true identity means for women?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially within the church. I've noticed a lot of feminism has corrupted even parts of the church, and it constantly places women in competition with each other. And we really just aim to talk about, what does it mean to be a woman in the Catholic Church? What is my main purpose in life? How do I best serve the church? How do I live my life as a woman within God's plan? So so the first year we had a plan, it was like, what is a woman? And then this, I know it's funny. Oh, yeah. And then the second, we did it before Matt Walsh, literally.
You did it before, it's cool.
I'm 90% certain that the Daily Wire's wiretapping my phone sometimes. Yeah. I will say something and then somebody has it on their podcast and I'm like, oh, nice, bro.
That's actually great because that means that the Daily Wire is currently listening to this podcast. Michael Knowles.
Ben Shapiro.
Shout out to you.
We are free if you...
We will take you on your podcast.
Sorry,
not to cut you off. I just had to give a quick shout out to Michael Knowles.
Oh,
I really want to get him on here.
I feel like if Michael Knowles is the type of person who would be like, yeah, absolutely, I'll come on your podcast.
He would absolutely kill us. we would not stand a chance.
So anyhow, yeah, we moved on from what is a woman into we come up with themes, and it was called translating modern society through sacred scripture, because Mary and I had this conversation, and I'm like, everyone wants to convince these girls that there are so many issues that are a gray area, when really the church makes a lot of things black and white, and the problem is social media, the world around them, tries to distort that. Let's go back to the Bible and sort of sort out where people go wrong on a lot of issues. And then this year I was like, dude, straight basics. Last year was heavy. Let's just talk about the sacraments. And so I don't even remember what our theme is called. I'd have to look at it. But we're just literally going through the sacraments on a sacramental level, and then a liturgical level, and then a parochial level. So it's sort of like, what is this sacrament? Where does it come from? What does it look like within the Catholic liturgical year? What does it look like as a parish, as a community? How do we live out this sacrament in everyday life? So right now we're in November. We're on Anointing of the Sick, and we spent yesterday talking about death, and the girls loved it. I'm not even kidding. It was the funniest thing. I just sat there and I was like, Memento Mori, remember your death. And they're like, absolutely, yes.
I don't think there's any more group of Christians that likes talking about death more than Catholics do.
Oh, heck yeah.
Particularly Catholic women, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was Mary Magdalene that discovered Jesus who rose from the dead. And all of a sudden it was like, whoa, death is really cool. Like, Jesus rose from the dead. That's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah. I think they're also just really in tune with it because women have the propensity to carry life. And so the concept of life and death is always with them. Even when Mary, when she gave birth to Jesus, she was fully aware of his death to come. Mm-hmm. And so it was always something that she was pondering. So
there's a re-novelization of it, kind of like Mary is. I mean, she is the antithesis to Eve, right?
Yeah.
And Eve is like the bringer of death to a certain extent. Like for humans, like she's the one who takes the bite of the apple, and that's what leads to all the death and stuff. And then you have a woman that brings it all back into life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good observation, I think. Yeah.
So we had a lot of girls graduate last year, and I was so worried that like most of it was just going to die down, but group's going well so far, and they like talking about death, and it's crazy, man.
Is there any group that talks with young men and high school men in your parish?
Unfortunately, not right now. I am hoping that someone is going to take that up soon. There are things in the works.
That's awesome.
Can't talk much more about that, but I've been hoping and praying because there are a lot of young men, and they really just need and deserve a space to create.
Yeah, so we need community.
They need community. They also, I legitimately believe one of the best things for men is to be able to be creative because it's in their nature. I'm hoping for something to start soon.
This is something that Mike has said a lot that I think is a really, really good point, that, just in general society, men especially are just lost. We're just lost people. We don't know where we are. And one thing that we really, really need to do is find our base. And a lot of times for men find their base inside groups of other men, people that kind of like help build them up. Because men really, frankly speaking, are nothing if there's not another guy around, right? Because if there's not another guy around, you have no one to compete against. And one of the biggest factors for men just growing up in general is their sense of competitiveness.
100%.
Like we both grew up with brothers,
it.
right? We both grew up with brothers. Yep. And a lot of the things that you end up doing, you don't realize it as you grow up, but you realize like, this interest that I have, it's not really because I was actually interested in it. It was more of the fact that, my brother was interested in this. My brother had Legos, and I wanted Legos. Not because I had any interest in Legos, but because I wanted what my brother had. Or my brother played basketball, and I wanted to play basketball so I could be better than him. Right?
It was funny in our house dynamic because the person who was first to be very athletic was my brother Jack, and Jack liked basketball and diving, and so both Ben and David did basketball and diving. But I noticed that when Jack was out of the house, it switched, and it was all soccer.
Yep,
that's true.
It's really funny how the oldest child can have such an effect on the younger siblings.
Wouldn't know.
Yeah. I mean, speaking as an oldest child, it's kind of funny. So I played baseball, and everyone played baseball a little bit when they were younger, but I played baseball at a really high level. We were always going to tournaments. So growing up, my siblings were all dragged to these tournaments.
Right.
They grew to absolutely hate baseball because none of them, after like t-ball, they all just stopped. They couldn't do it. Everyone ran though in our house because Chris
except
ran.
You.
And I ran to the fridge. Self roast. Hey Brian, relax, Brian.
Brian's going crazy over there.
I'll cut it. No, I'll keep it in.
No, you never cut stuff. Any interaction with Brian, we need.
Yeah, that's true. We need Brian.
Honestly, low-key, Brian's the only reason I came onto this podcast.
That's why we have him, because he brings people on. He helps us have a voice, very literally.
Yes. Guys, please, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Everything that you see in front of you was put together by Brian. And I don't know what we would do without Brian. So please, if you could like and subscribe, just for the sake of Brian, please.
Yeah,
please
you gotta subscribe so we can give Brian a paycheck. He's living on the streets right now. It's really tough for him.
It was pretty bad.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
He's
really
got a
bad.
seedy looking beard right now. No, I'm just kidding. I love your beard, Brian.
So we touched a little bit on being like the oldest boy in the house, because that's what we've experienced.
Yeah.
How was it with younger sisters?
It's so funny because I'm in such an odd position. When I was younger, and to this day, my mom calls my brothers my bookend brothers, because I have 2 older brothers and 2 younger brothers like directly next to me. And the age gap between me and the closest sister is 7 or 8 years. So I see a lot of sisters who have this close bond, and I'm always sort of like, I wouldn't really know what that's like, because my sister and I have always been in vastly different places in our life. And it's only just now that we've been able to talk more and be able to get slightly closer.
Don't you hate that?
A little bit.
Because now they're getting older.
I try not to think about it too much. One of the youngest girls turned 13, and it bothered me so much because that one is my baby.
Yeah, it's horrible. When I saw the one driving the
Yeah.
other sibling, it just looked wrong. It's like, where are you guys going? It's like, the dollar store?
I don't
Like,
know what it is, but like any age under 12 is fine. Like there's like no significant change, but it's like when you add teen to the end of that number, it just instantly you're like, I'm not okay.
No, it makes it real.
Yeah.
Like they actually are growing up now.
Yeah. It bothers me so much.
You're right. Yeah, there is something big about that number. It brings about like a lot of different changes. And I mean, your group that you have is specifically for people that hit that stage, right? Like that change.
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you think that there's like why is it, do you think it has any correlation with like, confirmation and stuff like that? Like that age that you're choosing for women to kind of like start joining your group, why is that age so important?
Well, it's some of the most formative years for girls. And, they're always talking about girls mature faster than boys. And when I was in high school, and this is one of the reasons my youth minister, I know that she wanted to do a group like the one I do now, was because I got so frustrated with the fact that I would go to these retreats, and it seemed like the only thing they would talk about for women was, hey, here's how to find the right husband, which is all well and good in itself, but I kept thinking, like, I know my faith is, like, much deeper and much richer than this, and you're not teaching me how to be an active part of it. And so as I said, those are the most formative years, and those are a good time to engage them like adults and say, this is yours, so let's talk about it, you and me. Let's be equals on this one, and let's talk. It's slightly different because obviously Mary and I come in at sort of a teacher's position, but there are a lot of times where the girls will ask questions and I go, I don't know, let's talk about it.
That's when you use AI and ChatGPT and knows everything.
Never.
Look it up on Google. How
Never.
do I run a girls group?
Yeah.
What is the Holy Spirit?
Well, you mentioned like being like the most formative years, and to any teenager, all they want to be is just an adult. That they just
Yep.
I'm an adult, treat me like an adult, and it's awesome to have that knowledge going into it and treating them like adults, giving them an opportunity to have a voice, and it's not just you speaking down to them. It's a conversation. It's a discussion. Like
Yeah,
it's awesome.
A guided discussion, because you want them to ask questions. And I've got like some amazing girls who are just so genuine and so sweet, and they'll stop and they'll ask questions without, like, it's the sweetest thing. They ask like simple questions and they never seem to worry about looking stupid or anything. And they'll go, wow, I didn't know that. And it's just really cool to watch them. Like, I have one girl who will bring a notebook, and it's so sweet to watch her like write things down because she's genuinely just so invested in this. One of the most humbling things is just listening to those girls like bring their own things to the table. There was one girl who was telling me the Sanctus in Mass. She said, when they're praying the Sanctus, my grandmother once told me that the angels, are essentially bringing up a chalice with your intention. So don't send your chalice up empty. And I was like, oh, dang, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I was like, that's...
Like, yeah, you just taught me
I was
something.
like, wow, that
Yeah.
just made my day. The other day, I found out, the divine praises?
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to them the other day, and I was like, where did these come from? And I found out they were like written in the 18th century by a guy who was like, if you're struggling with blaspheming or swearing, you're supposed to say the divine praises as a way to like train your mind and train your lips.
You just taught all 10 of our viewers that. So you're welcome, guys.
You're welcome.
Matthew Eby.
Pray the divine praises.
They are beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, so just fun facts like that
One
coming
thing-
out all the time.
It's so important. I think one of the things that we've really lost, one, very obviously, is the society, but just two, general people inside of the church, is just teaching kids how to start, because looking for a vocation, right, is how I'm going to sum it up. But essentially, like, kids nowadays aren't really taught how to, like, what does confirmation actually mean, right?
Yeah.
And you're told that there's an indelible mark that's placed on your soul, but you're not really given a full understanding of what your commitment to the church is actually supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? And I think when you're forming someone's soul towards a vocation, that has to be brought up in a very individual type of way, right? It needs to be separated between men and women, because men and women ultimately always have different vocations. No matter what.
Yeah.
There's 7 sacraments, but men and women partake in almost all of them in different ways.
Right.
The only 4 that they really do the same way are, communion, reconciliation, confirmation, and what was the other one that I was going to say? Marriage.
Anointing of the sick.
Yeah, nothing to say.
Well, anointing of the sick, but holy orders and matrimony are like the 2 really big ones of arguably adulthood to young adulthood or whatever.
Right.
Those are formed in extremely separate ways between men and women. And ultimately speaking, 95% of Catholics are going to fall into one of those 2 different categories, right? Some people might be called to celibacy and just being single, but for the most part, everyone's either going to be a nun, a priest, or, spouse. And people don't give children that understanding after, like, around the age of, like, confirmation anymore. There's not, like, any sort of, like, push to get kids married or to get them into certain things.
We're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump in.
Well, I mean, like, there's
you open the door. Let's just walk in. So it comes down to something I said earlier. Men and women are different, and we've
Very
been
much so.
treating them the same. But you mentioned how the sacraments. We all go through the same sacraments, but we all deal with different things.
Right.
Different sins that men have, women some of them have, but they also have different sins. Marriage, there's 2, obviously the man and woman, but it's completely different.
Right.
And putting everyone together, trying to say everyone's the same, everyone needs to we're gonna all learn just the surface level stuff and never dive into it. Never dive into what it actually means to be a wife, what it actually means to be a husband.
Well, to touch on that a little bit, I tell my girls all the time that your ultimate vocation as men and women is motherhood or fatherhood, be it spiritually or physically. That is your ultimate end. It's what you were created for. And I tell it to women because I see a lot of girls who I think there's just a lot of hurt around the motherhood thing, because there are women people are getting married later, so there are women who are trying to cultivate these virtues who haven't found someone yet, or they're struggling with a vocation of any kind. And God made Mary both a virgin and a mother for a reason. Those are 2, that is the peak of femininity right there, is Mary. And like it or not, motherhood is your ultimate goal. Fulton Sheen talks about in his book, 3 to Get Married, fantastic read. He talks about how in the final judgment, God will ask, where are your children? Because you're called to either raise children in the church or to bring people to the church. And so really, we're not teaching people how to cultivate the virtues, like the masculine virtues and the feminine virtues anymore. Like, there was one day I had the girls, I was like, list out feminine virtues. And so they said things like, gentleness, charity. I can't think of any more in this moment. Shopping, yeah. But then I was like, list out masculine virtues. And they listed out a couple, and I will say it was humorous. They found it very easy to list out masculine flaws.
Right.
I was like,
Well,
list
you
out
said flaws?
masculine vices. And then I was like, all right, list out feminine vices. And then I was like,
Ooh,
hypocrisy, self-control, like all of these different things. And it was funny.
I guess one of the things, I didn't put it very eloquently, like, people always push people towards their vocation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was people don't push people to the vocation in the sense of how that's going to pertain to them being either masculine or feminine, right? Someone being male or female. Because people get pushed like, oh, dude, you're definitely going to be married. Like, that's your vocation. But they don't phrase it like, oh, like, you are called to be a father, like a very masculine father. You're called to be a very feminine mother. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like it's really rash, but it's very true. Like, they're like, because they try to like squish them together almost.
Yeah. Confusing the roles a lot of like, both serve the same purpose. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what's awesome, this is a great topic of conversation, and our guest that we have coming on our next podcast just entered the seminary.
Oh, nice.
And so that's going to be perfect to even just push this on further, because he's taken that step into another vocation that not a lot of people know a lot about.
Right.
It's just like you said, it's just, oh, you're going to be married, oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, and no one looks at it holistically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you're able to do with that girls group, talking to them just as adults and having open discussion, having a safe space. Like people use safe spaces derogatory, but it's really important to have a space where you can be your authentic self with a community of people that are going to uplift you and help you grow.
Right.
We don't have that anymore. We have the internet where everyone goes to just die.
I think it's like it's like creating a spring, right? Like you are a spring, you're a font, and people come to you so that they can drink water from that spring. And then eventually, they become hydrated enough to go to other places, right? Terrible example, but you get the metaphor.
No, but they
right?
can also fill up a bucket and bring it to others.
Yeah, that's why I think it's like really pertinent. Like Jesus
bottle.
calls himself the font of life, right? Like you go to that spring, not so that like you're just gonna stay there, but you're thirsting in the desert. You need to find the oasis so that you can get out of it, right? So you become like hydrated or whatever, and then bring that knowledge or whatever you get from there to other places, right? Like you create a space so that people come to that space, and then they bring that space out with them. They don't leave without anything. They bring the fruits of what they've learned or what they've grown outside of it. You know what I
The
mean?
majority of people are learning nothing because we don't have a lot of these groups. It's just lost. People are just fed the internet. This is what you need to learn, and these kind of groups are super important.
They are, and COVID kind of destroyed a lot of that. Like, a lot of youth groups just got crashed and burned because of COVID, because people couldn't meet in person. Being together in the same space ain't nothing like it, man.
And that is a true fact and a beautiful way to end podcast 16. Nora, this has been fun.
Nice.
It's just different, It's a good conversation. Thanks for watching. If you watched all the way through, please like and subscribe. And this has been awesome. Podcast 16.
Thanks, man.
Hey.